Have you ever noticed that some men don't need to argue, explain, or justify? They don't raise their voice. They don't beg for validation. They don't even fight to be seen. They simply withdraw. When they do, something eerie unfolds. The room suddenly feels colder, like a chill has crept into the atmosphere. People start shifting in their seats. The silence becomes so loud, it echoes. It's not just quiet, it's a void filled with questions no one dares to ask. That's not passivity. That's calculated power. Machiavelli understood this truth on a profound level. To him, withdrawal was never about surrender. It was about domination through absence. He once wrote, "A prince must know how to disappear without losing his influence." Why? Because intentional absence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, people don't just see your silhouette, they see their own dependency, their own sense of entitlement. Their discomfort when something they always took for granted is no longer within reach. People don't fear the loss of your love as much as they fear the loss of their hold on you. They don't truly miss you. What they miss is their ability to summon you at will. That power, that control gone. And if you've been the man who always picks up the phone, who always explains even when it costs you, who maintains the peace by sacrificing his own time to face a hard truth, you've not been cherished. You've been consumed, used. Machiavelli would say that predictability is not a virtue, it's a weakness, a liability. The man who is constantly available is never respected, let alone feared. And a man who is not feared is easily manipulated. You might think that your kindness builds bridges. But kindness without limits, it quietly fosters resentment. It turns you into background noise, a fixture in the room, but never the force. You become the emotional, butler, liable, expected, invisible. Every time you say yes when silence would have been stronger, you're not being noble. You're auctioning off your dignity for a fleeting sense of relevance. Machiavelli would call that weakness dressed as virtue. He'd warn you, never allow your worth to be determined by your willingness to bend. When you're always accessible, you lose leverage, lose mystique. And make no mistakes, scarcity is the bedrock of influence. It is what makes people take notice, what causes them to reflect. So, the next time you're tempted to over-explain, to chase clarity with those who thrive in your confusion, to reassure, the very people who have never reassured, you don't. Withdraw instead. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but as a strategy of refinement. To reintroduce yourself not as the man who exists to serve their expectations, but as a sovereign presence whose silence now commands more attention than his words ever did. Withdrawal is not cowardice, it's evolution. It marks the shift. Moment you stop reacting and start positioning, the moment you become unpredictable, unreachable, untouchable, and that's when the world takes notice. Because when you disappear without warning, they're not simply wondering where you went, they're wondering why. What strength did you tap into? What truth did you finally accept that allowed you to stop explaining yourself? It's not your absence they fear, it's the power you found in silence. The power that made you walk away from the exhausting performance of constant justification. If this message stirs something inside you, if it reflects a truth you've long felt but never spoken, write it in the comments. I disappear to reclaim my power. Because that's exactly what this is about. Power reclaimed, peace earned. And if you feel ready to go deeper into this path, the quiet path, it's the one built not on noise but on self-possession, then subscribe. Not to follow the noise, but to rise above it. To become the kind of man who no longer begs for respect or chases validation. He commands it not with loud demands, but with intentional silence. With absence that speaks louder than presence. If you want to endure or truly survive in a world ruled by image, perception, and narrative, then you must let go of the comforting lie that goodness alone will shield you. Because the truth is more uncomfortable. Being useful isn't power, it's utility. And utility can be replaced. Being predictable isn't loyalty, it's complacency. The man who is always there, always ready, always accommodating, he becomes invisible. Because being always available is the death of respect. From The moment you were born, you were trained to be agreeable. Say yes. Don't make waves. Be nice. Show up early. Apologize first even when you're not wrong. Answer every call. Respond to every message. Smile through your exhaustion. But Machiavelli would smirk at such programming. He saw through it. He didn't believe in blind submission under the guise of politeness. He believed in managing perception, managing power. Because if you're constantly accessible, always explaining, endlessly giving, you've already abdicated the throne of your own life. You've told the world you don't require space or silence or sovereignty. But hear this. The man who makes himself cheap will never be treated as rare. You think replying immediately shows dedication, that showing up without being asked builds love, but what it really builds is expectation. An expectation, when left unchecked, always kills appreciation. People don't treasure what they expect on demand. They consume it, use it, discard it. Machiavelli saw the game for what it was. He wrote, "The man who seeks to be loved by all becomes the slave of the ungrateful, because people don't. Respect the man who always says yes. They exploit him. They know his script before he speaks. And here's how it plays out. They message. You respond. They stir conflict. You offer calm. They bring chaos. You bring resolution. You become their crisis manager, their validation machine, their human shield against discomfort. But you weren't born for that. You weren't put on this earth to be a buffer for broken people. You were meant to shape your life according to your values, not their emotional instability. Machiavelli wouldn't coddle you in that role. He would confront you, wake you up, he'd say. When they expect you, disappear. When they lean on you, let go. When they assume you're theirs, pull away. Remind them you belong to no one, because the man who cannot disrupt expectations will be forever trapped by them. You believe explaining yourself makes you noble, but in the hands of manipulators, every explanation is a confession. Your transparency becomes ammunition. Your kindness, when handed out indiscriminately, becomes a leash they will tug whenever it suits them. So what should you do? Break the rhythm? Shatter the pattern? Withdraw without notice? Let them feel the tension of your absence. Let them sit in the silence they once overlooked. Let the comfort they had in your availability collapse into discomfort with your ... boundaries. This is how you regain control. By replacing predictability with tactical silence, by refusing to perform on cue, by choosing to respond only when it serves you, not when it satisfies them. Power is not just an action, it's in restraint. You regain control by remembering something simple but often forgotten, that access to your mind, your time, your energy is not a right. It's a privilege, a reward granted to the worthy. Not everyone who knocks deserves the door opened. So, the next time you feel that internal pull to explain, to please, to respond, pause, ask yourself, does this person truly deserve a piece of my inner world? Or are they just hooked on the version of me who never says no? Because if the answer isn't a clear and powerful yes, then it's a strategic, unapologetic no. And that's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's not arrogance. That's sovereignty. The reclaiming of a self that was once scattered across too many approvals. If these words sting a little, good. Let them burn through the parts of you that were conditioned to be controlled, shaped to submit. If you're ready to dismantle the version of you that was trained to serve without limit, then declare it. Write it in the comments. My predictability is my enemy. And subscribe not to follow another voice, but to fortify your own, because from this moment on, you are no longer their emergency contact. You are not their quick fix, not their backup plan. You are a man in command, and in every war, make no mistake. This is when the wisest generals never fight every battle. They don't draw their swords for every insult or every provocation. They don't waste arrows on shadows. They observe, they calculate, they conserve. And when they strike with precision. Why? Because they understand something most men forget. Their greatest weapon is not the sword itself. It's the energy to wield it at the right time. Now bring that level of strategy to your own life. Every conversation you entertain, every insult you respond to, every small fire you extinguish on behalf of others, It costs you something. It chips away at you. And most men, they don't even realize they're bleeding. They wake up tired, not from work, but from exposure. Exposure to people who deplete them, situations that weaken them, habits that slowly leak their energy drop by drop until all that's left is fatigue and unspoken resentment. Machiavelli wouldn't call that burnout. He'd call it strategic failure, because the man who wastes his strength on trivial battles won't have the reserves when the real war comes. And make no mistake, it will come. You must understand this. Your energy is not infinite. It's not casual. It's currency. And who you give it to is not just a reflection of your choices, a reflection of who you obey. Carl Jung once said, "Every thought, every emotion draws from a limited reservoir." But Machiavelli takes it further, doesn't just protect energy, weaponizes it. He spends it as a king spends gold, not to be generous, but to gain advantage. You may believe you're being noble by showing up, by responding to every complaint, every cry for attention. You may think defending yourself in meaningless arguments proves your strength. But here's the truth one most people never admit. Every time you react, if you're being profiled, mapped, predicted, controlled, manipulators don't need to overpower you. They only need you to waste yourself. And you'll do it willingly in the name of politeness, in the name of keeping peace. It's in the name of being good. But what you're really doing is surrendering your kingdom. Machiavelli would never allow that. He'd instruct you, withdraw your energy from the useless. Let fools destroy themselves in the silence you no longer break. Let their noise collapse into echoes, because the moment you stop giving them what they crave, your validation, your time, your attentions, something shifts. You become dangerous. Not loud, not hostile, but unshakably composed. And when you no longer feed their illusions, they panic. They'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll label you selfish or detached. But Machiavelli would simply smile. Because now, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer easy to provoke, easy to read. You've stepped out of their reach, and in doing so, you've become something powerful, unreadable, and the unreadable man. He becomes ungovernable. You weren't born to be an emotional vending machine delivering comfort on command. You were never meant to pour yourself out like a public fountain. You were designed to guard your inner fire like a fortress. Because when your energy becomes sacred, your presence becomes rare. And when your presence is rare, it becomes something far more valuable than attention. It becomes influence. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits, quietly, watching, choosing, and that choice that. Discipline is what sets you apart. So here's your command. Stop defending yourself in battles that are beneath you. Stop wasting your essence on proving points that don't matter to people who never truly listened. Start conserving. Start protecting. Reserve yourself for the wars that shape legacies, not the skirmishes that boost egos. And the next time someone demands your reaction, stop. Pause. Ask yourself, do they seek resolution or just control? If the answer is murky, unclear, manipulative, then your response is simple. Default to silence. Not because you're afraid, not because you're indifferent, but because you're done being played. You've learned the difference between reacting and responding, between noise and precision. Type it below if this speaks to something inside you. My energy feeds no fools. And if you're ready to protect your power not with noise, not with drama, but with ruthless clarity, then subscribe. You are no longer a responder, and you are a commander. Because from here on out, you don't react. Calculate. You conserve. You rise. Silence is not retreat. It's not surrender. And it sure as hell is not weakness. Silence is a setup. It's a strategy disguised as stillness. A trap wrapped in calm. It is the weapon of men who no longer dance to the noise of others. Men who have stepped out of the echo chamber. Machiavelli never saw silence as absence. He saw it as camouflage. He once wrote, "The wise man does not need to lie.
Right.
He only needs to withhold." Because in a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, The man who says nothing becomes a threat. When you go silent, you disrupt the pattern. You remove yourself from their script. You step off the stage and now they can no longer direct the play. You become unreadable, and what they can't read, they can't control. Those who once praised your goodness, your availability, your ever-willing heart begin to squirm when you stop playing along. They used to call you kind. Now, they whisper that you're distant. They used to praise your dependability. Now they say you've changed. But here's the truth. They were never praising your character. They were praising your compliance. Didn't admire you? They admired their control over you? Machiavelli knew this well. He understood that when silence enters the room, it doesn't calm people. It exposes them. We would say silence doesn't confuse the strong. It only terrifies the manipulative. Because silence, true silence, breaks the mirror. And those who used you to reflect their comfort, their certainty, their dominance, now see only themselves. And most, they cannot bear what looks back. Loved you as long as you were predictable, as long as you mirrored their opinions, played their savior, and filled the void they never dared face. You were their echo chamber, their distraction from the truth, their emotional crutch. But the moment you fall silent, everything shifts. They are no longer shielded by your presence. They are exposed to the emptiness they buried under your availability. And this is where the mask collapses. The smiles that once greeted you start to fade. The compliments turn to criticisms. The same people who once leaned on you begin to accuse you. Why? Because your silence unmasks their dependence. They'll call your silence arrogance. They'll twist your boundaries into cruelty. They'll frame your growth as betrayal. But you must not react, because in that very moment, you are witnessing the unraveling of illusion. You're not watching people betray you. You're watching their masks slip off. Carl Jung described this as the breakdown of the persona, the false identity we adopt to be accepted, to feel secure, to avoid rejection. But Machiavelli would take it further. He wouldn't see it as a breakdown. He'd call it the beginning of the real game. Only when the mask falls does the game begin, he would say. Because at that point, you're no longer who they want you to be. You are who you choose to be. No longer agreeable for their comfort, no longer predictable for their convenience, no longer performing for their approval. You become powerful. You don't explain. You don't soothe. You don't react to preserve false peace. Let them misread. Your silence, let them spiral into confusion. Let them wear themselves out, trying to decode the mystery you've become. Because here's the truth. The greatest exposure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from withdrawal. It comes when you remove yourself and let them sit with the silence.
But
They once drowned in your voice. So here is your internal command. Do not explain, do not chase, do not clarify. Let the silence speak. Let it shake the ones who built their sense of control on your compliance. Let it rattle their illusion to the core. And if this message speaks to the part of you that is finished with performing, type this in the comments. My silence is the end of their illusion. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. In the theater of manipulation, silence is dominance. When you stop reacting, you don't just avoid chaos, you take control of it. You flip the board, you walk off the stage, you leave. Their script in tatters. Suddenly, they no longer know what you're thinking. They don't know how to get to you. They don't even know if you're still playing the game. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is not always necessary to strike. Not moving at all is the most terrifying strike of all. Because when you withhold your response, you create tension. Vacuum. A silence that expands until they start to panic. And in that panic, they reveal themselves. Most people have been conditioned, programmed to respond to every insult, every jab, every emotional trigger. Because when you react, they win. They know where your buttons are. They know they can pull your strings, but when you say nothing, you become unreadable, unreachable, untouchable. And slowly, they collapse under the weight of their own projections. Because manipulators hate silence. They can't twist it, can't weaponize it, they can't control it. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. Because in the end, silence is the death of their narrative. It unravels their manipulation without you lifting a finger. Carl Jung believed silence reconnects you to your true self, brings you back to the core of your being, grounded, undisturbed. But Machiavelli would go even further. He'd say that silence doesn't just center you, it disorients your enemies. It severs their link to control. It pulls the rug from under their tactics. Their aggression collapses inward. Their frustration festers. Their doubts multiply. And eventually they implode within the void your absence creates. This isn't weakness. This is psychological siege warfare. Quiet strategy of dominance. Spend their energy recklessly. You conserve yours with intention. They lash out with emotion. You remain still, focused, sharp. They burn out trying to provoke a reaction. You sharpen your resolve by not offering one. So here's the unspoken rule of control. He who speaks first exposes first. He who reacts too soon gives away his position. But the one who holds his silence, he owns the moment. He commands the dynamic. Let the silence stretch like drawn steel. Let them squirm. Let them fill the air with their own uncertainty. Let their own words echo in the space you refuse to fill. Let them hear the emptiness where your validation used to be. Because in that stillness, you reveal everything without revealing anything. If this strikes a chord, write this in the comments. My silence commands. You were raised, conditioned, shaped to explain your silence to feel guilt for needing space. You were taught to apologize for creating boundaries. You were expected to be the one who bends, who justifies, who makes others feel safe, even if it meant betraying your own inner peace. But Machiavelli would call this a fatal flaw, strategic collapse. He wrote, "He who justifies his every step gives others the right to question it. Once they feel entitled to question you, they never stop. Every time you say sorry for the late reply, or I was just overwhelmed, you reinforce a damaging illusion that you owe anyone an explanation for living life on your terms. But you don't. You never did. Your silence is not an offense. It is a declaration. Your boundaries are not cruelty. They are the design of your self-respect. Your detachment is not arrogance. It is the recalibration of a man who finally sees what he gave and how little was ever returned. The moment you stop explaining, you reclaim something sacred, authority over your own narrative. Because when people become too comfortable with your explanations, they stop respecting your instincts. They expect to be justified, consulted, soothed even, when they've earned none of that access. And when you deny them that comfort, they panic. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. You are not here to carry everyone's emotions. You are not here to be universally liked. You are here to be clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you allow. Clear about who earns your time, your presence, your energy. Machiavelli knew this truth intimately. He said a ruler must choose between being loved and being respected. Only one of those guarantees order. Only one creates strength. Too many men choose Levand. In doing so, they chain themselves to perception. They become emotional caretakers, trapped by the need to be liked. They pour their energy into everyone but themselves. But clarity is a sword, and silence is its sheath. You wield both the moment you stop defending your peace. You hold power the second you stop chasing understanding. So the next time someone says you've changed, just smile. Not because they're wrong, but because they finally noticed. They noticed the shift, the silence, the space you've carved where your compliance used to sit. You're not here to be accessible on demand. You're not here to shrink yourself into someone else's understanding. You're not here to be explained, to be softened, to be made palatable. You are here to evolve. An evolution real. Soul deep transformation doesn't require a permission slip, so let them guess. Let them whisper. Them misinterpret. The quiet is distance. The boundary is betrayal. Let them invent entire stories to explain what they're no longer allowed to access. Because that access, it was a privilege, not a right. Because every man who rises into sovereignty must first face the guilt of no longer being available to those who only loved his obedience. That ache, it's not from cruelty. It's from the recognition that your presence was being used, not cherished. If you feel this shift happening deep inside your soul, if you sense the transformation unfolding moment by moment, then engrave. This into your core. I owe no explanations for protecting my peace. There is a kind of pain that few men talk about, quiet, private pain that doesn't come from betrayal or loss or failure. It emerges in the stillness that follows your withdrawal. You stop replying, stop explaining. You step out of the roles they designed for you, rescuer, validator, entertainer, and suddenly the noise vanishes. The stillness begins. At first it tastes like freedom, then it tastes like doubt. Then something else creeps in. Loneliness. Emptiness. The uncomfortable quiet where their expectations once echoed loudly. You begin to ask yourself dangerous questions. Did I go too far? Was I too cold? Did I just destroy bridges I might need later? But in that silence, Machiavelli would meet you not with comfort, but with something more ruthless, you would say. Power is not born in applause. It is forged in isolation. And isolation isn't punishment. It's purification, a hard reset, a brutal cleanse of who you used to be. This isn't the pain of losing people. It's deeper. It's the pain of losing a version of yourself who needed their approval, the one who bent to fit, the one who kept showing up just to feel useful. You're not suffering from solitude. You're suffering from withdrawal, the withdrawal from the addiction to being needed, the comfort of being expected, from the illusion of being liked. Because every time you said yes just to keep the peace, you were saying no to yourself. Every time you showed up just to prove you're a good man, you've stepped one more inch away from your own power. Machiavelli would call it what it is, a strategic death, not an ending, but a necessary death. The kind of death that precedes rebirth. Because the obedient version of you has to die before the sovereign one can rise. So let it hurt. Let it burn. Let the echoes of your old self scream, rage, protest. Because that ache you feel in the pit of your chest, it's not weakness. It's detox. It's your nervous system shedding the skin of who you used to be. And in the space that pain leaves behind, something else is growing. Something sharper, clearer. Something no one saw coming. A man who no longer needs permission. A man who doesn't explain. A man who disappears and returns as his own force. Of nature, Carl Jung called this individuation the long, sacred process of integrating the broken, fragmented self into something whole. But Machiavelli would frame it as a transfer of power. It's not given to you, but taken by you from the hands of those who once fed on your need to be seen. Not handed, not gifted, but seized. Pulled from the grip of those who once thrived on your visibility, your availability, your addiction to being noticed. This transfer of power doesn't feel gentle, doesn't feel natural, because it isn't meant to. It will be uncomfortable. It will stretch you in places you didn't know could ache. But so does every great transformation. The lion is never born in applause. The lion is born in solitude, far from the crowd, far from praise. He doesn't roar for recognition, roars because he finally remembers his voice, his strength, his territory. So don't run from the pain. Stand in it. Let it pierce you. Let it purify you. Let it refine you into something unshakable. Let it crown you. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. Them you created to feel less alone, less empty, more seen. And in doing so, you found yourself, not a version, not a performance yourself. If you feel this shift awakening deep within your bones, if you recognize this metamorphosis taking hold, then declare it clearly. My solitude is my sanctuary. Because there is a monumental difference between being seen and being remembered, between being around and being respected, between being liked and being valued. But most men confuse attention with influence. They think visibility means impact. But Machiavelli understood something deeper, something timeless. He wrote, "The prince who is always seen becomes ordinary, but the one who controls when and how he appears becomes unforgettable. Your presence once constant, predictable, always reachable made you familiar, convenient, but not powerful. Because what is always available becomes expected. What is always within reach loses both. Wait and wonder. What is ever present fades into the background, becomes invisible. You used to show up before they even thought to look," you replied, "before they ever had to wonder. You explained yourself before they even asked a question. And by doing that, you unknowingly train them to treat you as forgettable, to place you at the edge of their attention rather than the center of their respect. But here's what no one ever taught you. Scarcity creates value. Distance, when intentional, commands respect. Absence, when strategic, builds gravity. You don't need to vanish completely. You just need to become deliberate with your presence. When you speak constantly, your words become noise. But when you choose your moments carefully, your voice carries force. Each sentence becomes seismic. When you're always around, they don't notice. But when you appear only when it matters, your presence becomes unforgettable. Machiavelli would call this calculated absence. It's not as a game, not as manipulation, but as asset protection. Let them feel the weight of your absence, so they never again take your presence for granted. This isn't pettiness. This isn't emotional withholding. This is the disciplined defense of your energy, your most finite resource. Your time, your mind, your emotional bandwidth. These are not public offerings. These are investments in not everyone qualifies for a return. So from this moment on, let this be your new standard. Not everyone gets a reply. Not everyone gets an explanation. Not everyone earns the right to your presence. The more they assume you'll always show up, the more you must challenge that assumption. Because when they don't know where you stand, when they can no longer read your patterns, that's when they begin to feel your power. Think of gold. Its value doesn't lie in how brightly it shines. Its value lies in its rarity, and how protected it is, and how difficult it is to obtain. So ask yourself, why should your presence be any less valuable? Why should your attention be handed out like a free sample? Why should your presence, something hard-earned, hard-built, and rooted in depth, be treated like something disposable? The man who is always seen, always heard, always available is soon forgotten. But the man who chooses his entrances, who knows how to speak when necessary and vanish when wise, that man becomes a force they fear to misuse, a presence they learn to respect. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. This is the stance of kings of men who are not here to be convenient, but to be consequential. From this moment forward, your attention is no longer a habit. It is currency. Your presence is not just social, it is leverage. In your absence, that becomes a reminder, silent but resounding reminder of your worth. So with every message, every meeting, every handshake or interaction, ask yourself, is this person earning my presence or just assuming it by default? Because assumptions breed entitlement. Entitlement is the enemy of value. And if you feel that shift stirring within you, speak it clearly, even if only to yourself. My presence is earned. What you've just walked through, this transformation, not some guide to being liked. It's not a motivational pep talk. It's not therapy. This is war, a psychological war. A war between who you were trained to be and who you now must become. Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised clarity. He didn't teach how to be nice. He taught how to be in control. He didn't worship kindness without strength. He respected power disguised as kindness and withdrawn the moment that kindness became a leash. And if you've truly paid attention, then you've now learned one truth that governs all others. A man who does not command himself will be commanded by others. And true command begins with withdrawal. Withdrawal from weakness, withdrawal from the need to explain everything, withdrawal from emotional servitude, from being the man who bends to everyone but himself. When you step back, you don't lose ground. You create distance. And in that distance, you become unreadable, mysterious, powerful. Because when you no longer react on demand, people don't just wonder where you went. They begin to question what they lost. And when you stop justifying your decisions, you don't just set boundaries, you raise standards. The moment you stop seeking clarity in others, you begin building certainty in yourself. You stop performing for the crowd. You stop apologizing for changing. You stop explaining your evolution to people who only ever respected your obedience. Machiavelli would remind you this kind of power is not granted. It is taken. It is kept not by brute force, but by sharp calculation. You are not here to be endlessly available. You are not here to be decoded. You are not here to be emotionally open for public use. You are here to govern yourself like a kingdom, to choose who enters, who remains, and who will never again be given a key. This is the Machiavellian man. He does not explain. He does not react. He does not beg to be understood. He speaks when it serves him. He vanishes when it strengthens him. He returns only when the terrain favors his move. Your new life, this stronger self, does not begin with fanfare. It begins in silence. And it ends not in applause, but in dominance. Not dominance over others, but over the one thing that was always stolen from you, your self-command. From this point forward, let others gossip. Let them assume. Let them wonder. Let them miss you. But you withdraw. You observe. And you return only when it serves you. Because, as Machiavelli knew all too well, the game does not belong to the honest, it belongs to the prepared. And now you are